So, hello and welcome, one and all, to this and special March edition of Frivolous Gravitas. I'm Chris Driver, and with you is the indelible and delightfully charming Mr. Jordan Roy, here with you today to cover the subject of skepticism. As usual, we will start with our baseline of defining our terms. So I just pulled up a quick wiki here just to get us going. Skepticism, or skepticism, spelled with a K or C, is generally a questioning attitude or doubt towards one or more putative. I should have read this first, eh?
Putative.
That's a new one for me. Generally, a questioning attitude or doubt towards one or more putative instances of knowledge which are asserted to be mere beliefs or dogma. Formally, skepticism is a topic of interest in philosophy, particularly epistemology. So.
Oh yeah, that's Wikipedia.
Yeah.
What the Merriam-Webster has it: an attitude of doubt or a disposition to incredulity, either in general or towards a particular object, or a doctrine of doubt and skepticism, which is science, which we'll be getting into.
And doubt, the theory that certain knowledge is impossible is another definition I got.
So this is just what would we call this? Doubt with a method. So
like a purpose and not a wanton disbelief. It's a purposeful disbelief.
It's orderly doubt.
Yeah. I think our definitions are better.
Yeah, we're done. This is the.
Yeah, we're done. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah. So before we get started, I'm sorry about the wait. I've been moving, as you can see. I'm not done moving, so hopefully we'll return to our regular broadcast schedule soon. But
that reminds me of the clips. We've had clips been issuing out, so
yeah,
by popular demand, we've got short form editions of our wonderful podcast.
Apparently, you guys have been watching those because they get pretty decent views. Actually, I don't know how.
Have they?
I don't know. They
might just be the YouTube algorithm thing.
It might be like quicker views rather than, more over time. But I've actually been watching them myself too, because I'm just like, whoa, is that what we sound like? Because when you actually do work and then you go back to the work and you're like, how did I do this? But you were so in the zone that you were working at a higher level because you got in there. Yeah,
so a bit of skepticism creeps in there.
Yeah, was I talking like am I actually?
Is that really me?
All right, so that's a nice little segue back to our actual topic. So skepticism is definitely a huge part of our modern society. We before it was seen as like, oh, you're skeptical, why don't you just go along with it? For the longest time, that was kind of it was a thing of, I don't know, people mistrusted skepticism. They were skeptical of skepticism. Why don't you just fall in line, because life's hard enough. We don't need to, there's enough questions that we have here. We don't need to be asking new ones.
I think the general perception of it by the public at large has been more like, you're creating problems where there are none. Like, don't be a squeaky wheel. If it doesn't need to be fixed, don't fix it. That kind of thing.
Yeah, we already know that the rain god's gonna come in May, so why are you worried about it? It's like, what's this one story, and then they burn the heretic.
But I think that woefully dismisses the actual utility of skepticism, though, in that it prevents us from falling into pitfalls just out of routine and pattern, which I think is very human nature-esque.
Right. And that's, in our modern society, it serves such a valuable purpose. It's like anything else, it's a tool, but it's a very powerful one. And it's one that, when used properly, as you say, can get, fantastic results. And it's such a deceptively simple tool, because, I can just be like, why am I doing this? I'll be shoveling snow and I'll be like, wait, why am I doing like this? I could just be skeptical of anything that I'm doing and then
push instead of lift, that type of thing.
Yeah. Or like I could rig a couple snow shovels up to my car and just then, my wife comes outside and says, I'm skeptical that this is a good use of your time. So I think a lot of times, though, I don't think it's we're going to be good if we just approach the entire topic at once. But I think it might be good to start at a place where the most methodical use of skepticism that we have in the modern day, which is the scientific method, this engine of doubt and skepticism that allows us to find results. I'm not saying science is like a verb, because that's one of or science is a noun, which is definitely one of my either, actually, now that I think about it.
We should make it a verb. Yeah. Let's science that.
Well, I'm going to do science, which is I'm going to apply a method in order to get result, find out what the result will be, which is proper. But like when you use it as a noun, like I effing love science, it's just like, that's definitely a pet peeve.
I do that all the time.
I'm guilty of it too, because sometimes it's easier in shorthand to be like, it's just it's some science stuff that I don't need to get into now because I'm building a shelf.
It sounds less pretentious than saying because logic, duh.
Logic dictates
because
that.
Science.
Thanks, Spock.
But I think where it's useful in science is it's sort of it is the approach of like it's the thing that we use to figure out what to test and how to test it and like problem solve. So essentially, anytime you're doing a scientific study, what you're essentially doing is you're testing a hypothesis, or sometimes it's a peer review where you're criticizing another person's hypothesis. And the utility is, if we just believed everything blindly, then science would just be blind faith, which would be religion.
Yeah. Well, and that's not even believing everything blindly. That's believing a certain set of things very blindly.
So if a study came out and we just believed it without skeptical thought or criticism or peer review, it would essentially just be a faith.
Yeah.
And like, thus useless.
You should wear 2 masks because it's more effective. Well, this gets into, because that is happening almost daily now in our society, where we have these, things like studies show that this or that. And we've actually had that as a bit of a meme or a joke that we've been telling each other since at least grade 12.
Grade school, yeah.
Yeah. And because we used to just make fantastic claims in high school, and teacher would be like, "What are you talking about?" We'd be like, "Studies show, come on, get with the program." And then I think our poor teacher would just throw a fit conniption at us.
But there's that issue of like misplaced skepticism, where some people think that I guess they don't think about it. That's the problem, where they assume all skeptics are created equal.
Yeah.
For example, if the World Health Organization during a COVID crisis or something like that, for people to not believe that a pandemic was a pandemic, even when by definition it had crossed borders and boundaries, and then waited till the government declared it a pandemic, and then suddenly they disbelieve that there is a pandemic even after it's been declared, when the declaration of the pandemic is itself, ipso facto proof of one.
Yeah.
The fact that another country is talking about another country's virus means that it's crossed the border. So there's different levels of skepticism. Like there's skepticism of statistics that a late night talk show host says as a joke on a comedy bit written by some script writers. Yeah. And then there's skepticism of like health initiatives, like wearing a mask actually prevents the spread of an infectious airborne disease. So
yeah, and I think you can
choosing where we're skeptical, I think, is important, is what I'm getting at.
And I think we can all think of 1 or 2 people that are pseudo-skeptics, where they are skeptical of anything that just doesn't feel like something they want to believe or something. And they don't really even have anything they believe. They just go with what feels right. And everything else is given over to skepticism. And if I am skeptical of it, therefore it is wrong, and therefore I disregard it. The skepticism in itself is evidence against it, because if you can be skeptical, well, anything that's true must be able to not only not stand up to skepticism, but must only be so obvious that skepticism would be illogical in itself. Like rain falls in a certain way. You don't really need to be skeptical about it because you've seen it, and to have it work any other way. And to say rain falls upwards would be, ludicrous. But
perfectly valid to test it if you feel the need to. You can drop a bunch of water and test it all you want, but to have that disbelief just because you disbelieve it because of how you feel is sort of not methodological.
Right. And something
not the
like
scientific method.
It's raining frogs or something, which we always used to say, it's raining frogs or something. And then we learned that in places around the world, there's like, it gets so humid that some might lift up tiny frogs and then it'll drop them again. And it's just like, no way. And I like, that's a healthy skepticism. It's just like, it sounds like there's something here that seems a little weird. And then you see a video of it and it's like, okay. But
Sharknado doesn't happen.
Yes, Sharknado's a bit much. Unless they're like helium sharks. No. So on one end, I would like to get into the scientific method, but I think on one end we can find, you have that whole idea of open and closed minds, but have an open mind, but not so much that your brain falls out, and be willing to, and don't close it up too much. But I think that's where it is. But at the same time, when you question stuff, that's how you get answers. And when you get into a habit of questioning things, just everyday things, you can find strange new answers to even the most mundane problems. Although I've been doing that constantly over the last month as I've been just moving and trying to solve problems of weight and
Tetris.
Yeah, pretty much just giant Tetris problems. And at the same time, like putting stuff where I needed to go, finding out what materials I need to do repairs on the old and new place. And these are problems that I'm having to solve. And so I have to approach it with an air of skepticism, because like, why would they do this? Why is this the way it should be? And
is this box going to carry my books? And do I have enough gas?
like these small problems, which you think are just like, you just made a decision, but it's still, the process is still happening. That process in itself, we definitely have codified into a very specific, method, which we now call the scientific method, which is
AKA the science.
This is this science that we did. Now you can go back to Descartes. You can find this in ancient societies, but it's not like codified. I think a lot of people attribute it to Bacon, but in reality, a lot of people at the late Renaissance, early Enlightenment were tinkering with a way to get results without resorting to articles of faith. And aside from that, you get this method, which we have. Let's see if I can remember it. So you have a question, you have a problem, or you have a what do you call it? An effect. You don't know why something happens. So the question becomes, why does this happen? So that's your first step, is right there, is asking the question. Then you come up with a possible explanation. Why does the water boil at this temperature? That's when I apply heat to it. Like, what's going on? So you say, well, why does the water change from one state to another? Well, it's because my hypothesis is that it's because heat is being applied to it. Counter hypothesis is just maybe there's a electrical current going through it or something. I don't know.
Or atmospheric pressure or something.
Maybe something just does that. Maybe there's a god in the sky that's thirsty, and so he's like, or something. And there could be an electromagnetic anomaly coming through the ground and through the pot right there. I guess it's possible. It's stupid, but it's possible. So then you have your hypothesis and you make your prediction. So I say heat's being applied to this water, which is making it go from that to a gas. So, because I saw that there might have been like a fire under it or something, and it's really warm around here, so there's heat happening. So I'll apply heat. So I'll make a prediction. If I apply heat to water, it'll turn into that gas. Then I actually do it and test it. And what happens is I see what happens. And then this is the testing part, is going to be the part where I, actually see. And this is where a lot of people trip up, because a lot of people will find something and say, oh, I didn't want that, so I'm just going to maybe look at it in a different way and put some, what do you call that? Interpretation on it and see what else I can find. And
I think cognitive bias plays a lot into that too, because people want to believe certain things. And I'm not just saying other people, I mean all human beings have cognitive bias. Like, we want to reaffirm beliefs we already hold without questioning them. And I think that's what makes it important to consciously question things.
Right. I
not just for the sake of it, but
I don't think it's as strong as certain people claim, but they are there and you can be aware of them. They're not like unconscious hiding, and if you try and find them, they just dig themselves in. No, you can be aware of them. I remember how stupid I used to be even 10 years ago, and a lot of questioning later, I changed my biases.
It's a whole bunch of little things that people don't even think about, really, like homelessness, for instance. Millions of people think that homelessness is a choice.
Yeah.
Right? Or that just like positive thinking makes your life better and money falls in your lap from smiling at the sun and not doing anything about your financial situation.
Yeah, smiling at the sun makes you blind.
So in my opinion, those are I'm not sure if this is like the scholarly opinion, but in my opinion, that's a cognitive bias in that you don't want to be proven that the world is actually unfair to certain people, or that, lottery plays a big factor into your success, or, things like that. You want to take credit for the hard work you do.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a very healthy way of looking at it, because there's a lot of unconscious bias where like you see people who have, I don't know what they would say, internalized racism or something like that, and but then someone would claim that because I'm white I have inherent racial tendencies. It's like, no, because I'm human, I have an inherent bias of mistrust of difference. It's not a racial thing, it's a human thing. If something,
and it's because of skepticism that you can avoid being a racist person.
Right. I can be skeptical of my own reaction to, something that I've never encountered before, like some guy wearing clothes I've never seen, of a phenotype that I've never encountered before, and I'll be like,
smelling like a spice I've never seen or heard of.
It's just all these things I've never encountered, and all of a sudden you're just like, what's this? It's not like, ooh, it's a minor race. It's like, no, it's just something different and unknown. And if I'm skeptical, I can be like, all right, but he's still a person. Okay, so what can we do? Well, who is this person that I'm coming across? Hypothesis. Well, he's probably foreigner or some folklorama type person. Maybe testing. I'm going to try and talk to him and ask. Analysis. He said his name is Jonathan. So
thank you, skepticism.
So skepticism. And I know we're conflating skepticism and the scientific method, which is, there's someone just sitting there going, that's not the same thing. It's the scientific method uses skepticism. It's like, yes, that's correct. Skepticism is the underlying fundamental of why we do that. And so there are biases, and yes, it does let us get around them. I have a bias to not being in water over my head. I don't like it. And I don't think I'm going to get around that one. But I can be skeptical and say, but I don't have to. It's irrational.
It won't kill me.
So that's I
think that's a really good point too, because skepticism is good for mental health in the sense that it gets you around anxieties, and everybody has inherent anxieties too.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's from childhood trauma and it's really severe and obvious, or if it's just latent and you didn't even really notice because nobody brought it to your attention.
Yeah.
Like having skepticism, you can walk yourself through an uncomfortable situation. Just be responsible. Like you can do things you don't want to do because you're skeptical of your own nature.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, if you start questioning your own sadness or say something like that, or your own trauma, it's like, am I actually traumatized? It's like, yeah, probably. But does this mean I need to follow the path that society says I need to grab a bunch of ice cream, go chill in my bed antisocially for years?
Must I exhibit signs of it to show everybody, or is that just a symptom of my condition?
Right. And then, skepticism. Is playing up my trauma for the benefit of charity from others worth it more than just living my life in spite of my trauma? And I feel like a lot of people answer that question poorly nowadays. But
or showing off your body so that you can get affections or attentions from other people, like being skeptical of all those little things that we do naturally. Like naturally we try to attract the opposites, or whatever sex we're attracted to. We try to attract them, but we don't always do it consciously. Like there was a study that done like when women are ovulating, they show more skin in the clothes they choose to wear. Just little things like that. But being skeptical of it allows you to be more self-conscious, not in the bad way, but self-conscious in the self-awareness type of way, like living more enlightened life.
Right. And like you can't go around, and that leads you to that can also lead you to a skeptical misstep too. Because it's like, oh, you've seen the studies show women reveal more skin during ovulation, and therefore you can create a nasty improper syllogism out of that, which is thrown out of the water if you're not careful.
But we're not talking about bikini naked. We're just saying, like, instead of this, they do this. Like, it's just a slight difference.
It's on average. But I think one of the things that we do is that we're actually quite used to this in society nowadays. We're used to this sort of skepticism, but not everyone uses it well. And I think that's a lot of the problem, because you're supposed to be, we pay lip service to skepticism a lot, and it shows up in, we've seen this for the last forever. We just went through a very rough couple of months in the political sphere, rough as in annoying. And we were being told to be skeptical of one side and not the other by both sides, which leads me to be skeptical of both sides.
Yes.
And
beware the teacher who tells you not to ask.
Yeah. And it was exactly. It was annoying in the way that you get the idea of skepticism used as a blunt instrument. And no, don't. It's like, but don't use it to its full extent. So it's like, drive a car, but don't use the brake. You can put both your hands on the wheels, but you're also not allowed to use the radio, because that's not how you use a car. It's like, and that's kind of what it feels like. Is you're using only half of the tool, and
usually the wrong end when you're not thinking about how you're using it.
Yeah, and
if you grab a hammer and you don't think to grab the handle and you start whacking around, like,
yeah. And
it's not half as useless because you grab the wrong half. It's like completely useless when you grab the wrong half.
Yeah, you grab the blunt end, and the other side says, "No, grab the part that takes the nail out." And neither of those are telling you to grab the handle.
Yeah.
So
And the handle's got no weight to it. It's rubber. Like none of it is useful for driving a nail or pulling a nail.
yeah,
The handle.
So right now I think a lot of the problem there is that we're not treating our own perspective, our individual perspective as an authority with regard to problem solving and judgments. Because you see all these people are saying, in the media right now, they're saying, trust us, we're the authority, don't make a judgment, don't be skeptical, just we'll be skeptical for you. And that's not how skepticism works. So you just defer to an authority all the time. And now everyone's skepticism faculties are all out of whack. But it's an individual's tool. It's not a group tool. You can use it in a group, as in like a science team or something like that, where you all come together and work on a hard problem. But it's still a very deliberate skepticism and that thing. But if you defer to others, you're not actually being skeptical. You're only being
lazy.
Well, yeah, it's lazy. And there's a lot of encouraged lazy because, don't think, just vote. It's like, oh boy.
Yeah. Like if you wanted your life to be as easy as possible, what you would do is tell other people to think like you. You would say, don't worry, trust me, just do what I say. Like to me, it's evidence that somebody's trying to manipulate a group of people whenever they say, I'll be skeptical for you.
Yeah.
Because what they're trying to do is like cater to or pander to your laziness. Mm-hmm. They're trying to get you to capitulate without forethought to serve their own means or ends. And this goes for both sides. Like it's not just conservatism or radical Nazis. It's like the left, that cancel culture, radical left as well. And it's centrists too, who are on, taxation policies or treaty arrangements and things like that. Like
this is what's right. No, go do your own research. And that's, I think a lot of it is that, and you get a lot of that with the archives too. It's like they're hiding it from us. No, it's in there. Go find it. Do your research. But that's the thing. It takes effort, and a lot of people are, oh, that's hard. Don't worry about that. Oh, we're in lockdown. Don't go outside. It's like you have the internet.
Yeah. So with everybody telling you how bored they are, they don't have time to do anything useful, like think somehow. And I say that ironically.
Well, we started this where we can put two heads together instead of being this, and I moved. But
I think it's really important, the stuff that we do, though, because we're not just preaching things that are written from textbooks. We're sort of modernizing the things we have learned through experience. Mm-hmm. And rather than being afraid to be wrong on camera or, to say something that somebody might object to, we're speaking truthfully and honestly in the hopes that other people are encouraged to think for themselves as opposed to believe the things that we're telling them to think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This is
like, I like to feel like that's the purpose of this channel, is to show people how to have a conversation about things that you're thinking.
Yeah.
Without it being right or wrong from the onset or being crucified for it.
Yeah. There was at least I remember one thing that I did wrong, at least.
I've said a bunch wrong.
I remember specifically.
The Challenger explosion. It was like,
oh yeah.
I called it Columbia.
But I did an entire podcast to forgiveness, and I forgot to mention the word confession. I went through what confession is. We didn't look at it, and it's been bugging me the entire time. But here I am saying, I'm skeptical of my own work. Is it good enough? Can I do better? And I'm not taking, and that's that personal bias that we all have, that bias towards I am the sole person in existence, and therefore I am the most important person in existence, which to some extent you are the most important person in your existence. Drink water, get proper sleep, eat properly, please, for your own sake and for your own personal bias.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you are an individual in a group of people, which is why we can't just make these assumptions, because you have to be skeptical of, oh, maybe they're actually not just being a jerk to me. Maybe I shouldn't just assume everyone's being mean, because you have that like, oh, everyone's so mean to me. But if you're in a bad mood and you read a bunch of texts, you're going to read them in a different voice than if you were reading them in a good mood.
And you probably won't notice until you're in a good mood, like hours and hours later, or days later.
So like, get texts from your friend, and then like before lunch when you're really hungry and stomach's rumbling, and then have lunch and then read them again. And it'll say different stuff. It's weird, but
or if you're writing letters, like I used to have to, when I was a property manager, write bylaw violation letters for condo owners and stuff like that. Like, just the snarkiness that comes off in a tone when you're quoting a bylaw at somebody and telling them to shut up, like, it changes from before lunch to after lunch. Like, the tone of words and the reception of words too, but also the tone of the projection changes things.
So I keep bringing up the individuals because the individual definitely, and I say this because the individual is definitely the focus of this. You have to be skeptical as an individual. If someone comes in and says be skeptical, well, are you actually being skeptical? That's I'm 14 and this is deep question, so let's not get into that. But
I love recursion.
Yeah.
I still do it.
So one of the things that we're seeing, and we can dive really deep into this, is how you can be put to skepticism on certain topics, and you can be manufactured skepticism by this large media which has its interests in read, buy, don't question, keep reading and buying, because that keeps us employed, and we're just going to keep throwing stuff at you that you respond to. And this shows up also in social media, which I think the worst offender for this is Facebook. We're allowed to say that, the book of faces, where there is no dislike button. You are only allowed to, let me just pull this up.
I guess that's a good case to make for Reddit, because I think there's a downvote button on Reddit.
Yeah, there's problems with that too. But okay, here we go. What do we have here? We have like, love, care, laughing,
there's an angry like,
happy, shock.
So I guess that counts.
Yeah, angry, but the angry isn't I dislike this. The angry is this makes me angry. So if someone posts something that's like Trump breathes and it's just like angry, it's like it's still assent to the person posting it. It's not a dislike. They like the post. They dislike what they're disliking along with the content. And
that's not a subjective assessment either. That's like how Facebook's algorithm works. If you put an angry face, it counts as a reaction, and they promote things that are reactive.
Yeah,
that's how they keep faces on the book.
Yeah, sometimes I mess with it and I get like an ad for, I don't know, juice, and I'll say it's inappropriate.
YouTube's driving me nuts for that. Like, I keep telling them, just let me pick my own ads instead of you trying to guess randomly, because you suck at guessing.
Yeah.
But YouTube won't let me tell them which ads I want to see.
I keep getting ads for the new F-18 fighter jet, and it's just like, what do you want? You want me to buy a jet? Because I will. But you want me to like mail my MP points and be like, hey, McDonnell Douglas totally just sent me this thing and it looks like a really cool thing. We should buy some. It's like, said no one ever.
Yeah. But it's again, it's like trying to appeal to people who think, those jet planes are cool. I should join the army. I should be an Air Force pilot. Like it's so subtle what they're doing. To manipulate people, but they're doing it by telling you not to be skeptical of the ad that they're showing you, right?
Right.
Like, they're not saying this was sponsored by the USAF. They're just saying, look how cool this plane is.
Well, that's actually by the company which is the strangest part. If it was the...
No, but I mean, like, whoever is doing the ad, they don't explicitly go out of their way to articulate that. What they're trying to do is knee-jerk a reaction from you.
Well, that one's actually, I bring that one up because, not because it's actually useful to our discussion, but because it's absolutely strange, because it's from the company that makes those jets, and they were advertising as the company that makes those jets.
So it's probably for political support then.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no room in the budget because Biden's trying to cut the budget. They're probably trying to rally support.
It's Canadian. Canada does need new fighter jets. We have like maybe 12.5 fighter jets total.
For what? Where are we going to take our fighter jets?
The North. The North really needs them. They also need boats.
The North needs them.
No, not to defend, but to patrol. Because scrambling the same fighter to push the Russian probe back out. It's like it's
wouldn't it be easier to just agree on a border with Russia, like diplomacy? Why don't we do that with all that money? Why don't we be diplomatic? This is skepticism, by the way. We're practicing.
Well, it's the North is an interesting case because if we actually pushed it for a border, we just soft claim it, and we've been soft claiming it forever. And if we actually pushed it, Russia would just be like, well, obviously it's mine. We put a flag in there with a submarine. It's just like, yeah, we remember. Well, you and Denmark fight over that one island. It's like, yeah, but me and Denmark, we like each other.
But first things though, Putin actually said, or I don't know if it was Putin, but Russia said officially on the record, they were planting the flag just as a discovery. Like that they had been there. They said explicitly they weren't claiming territory by doing it.
I'm skeptical.
I am too.
But
I mean, if they did explicitly make a declaration of land over Canada, the US would absolutely flip. That's why they wanted Alaska, so that they could prevent a Russian invasion through Canada because Canada's weak.
Well, the Alaska thing is actually really interesting because they bought it at a time when Russia couldn't handle all its shit. I like to say that anyway, all of its land. They sold it for, what was it, $5 an acre or something? Just something absurdly cheap because Russia's like, it's too far away. There's nothing there. It has no strategic relevance. And so the Tsar, in his infinite, wisdom, just sold it to the States. We're like, yeah, we'll take it. We have land claims to fight over with Britain anyways, and this will piss the British monarch off. So let's do it. The Americans were still kind of like, it was fun to snub the British crown. So they just bought it because it's cheap land and that's more west that they can send, that people can go off and do American things with. And, which was actually a long-term strategic misstep on Russia's part, to such a degree that they lost out. And they also actually cut them off from the fur trade to some extent, because Russia killed all their beavers off during the fur trade, which is why everyone was coming over to Canada. One of the reasons. Anyway, history lesson over. So
mainly it's because we wouldn't sell Vancouver Island to them.
Yeah,
they just wanted something.
There was that whole thing with the Panhandle. I got some. I think it's.
We still have an island that's in dispute with the States, eh? It's in the Great Lakes region or out east somewhere.
Yeah,
there's like a lighthouse on it, and there's a line down the middle, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah, at this point, it's just like border goes through the island.
Yeah. Or my favorite is that there's an American town that's inaccessible by America.
Yes, it's near Manitoba. West Coast. Oh, yes, but there's one.
You have to cross a border to get from America to America. You have to cross the Canadian border. It's hilarious. Yeah, so when they shut down the borders, though, for COVID, all the people were stuck there because they weren't allowed to technically cross the border.
There's one in Manitoba. What is this? Angle Inlet. It's right in Buffalo Bay there.
Oh, yeah?
Buffalo Point. And it's on Lake of the Woods. And the border goes through Lake of the Woods, up into Manitoba, down back into Lake of the Woods, and then back into Manitoba. And there's this little piece of land with I think it's got a reserve on it. But essentially, it's just Angle Inlet. and Oak Island, and it's just the border is just right there on the lake and cottage country there, which I think is just, it's historically fascinating, but it actually doesn't serve any what do you call it,
Function.
Function. Yeah, it's just no diplomatic interest in it. So
Yeah. But taking it back to the whole skepticism
yeah,
thing, I mean,
it's fun, but
the point is, without skepticism, you don't question stupidity, basically, is what we're getting at. It's the reason we don't keep doing stupid things that we're already doing repetitively.
Right.
When we're skeptical, and when we have the ability to objectively stand back from a third party perspective of our own situation and take a broad scale view of, like, an assessment of the situation as it is, that requires skepticism fundamentally, I think.
Mm-hmm. And that comes to, when you approach something, that comes to one of the definitions, the doctrine that true knowledge, or knowledge in particular area, is uncertain. And I guess that comes to that whole idea, like, there is absolute truth, but that's a completely
very rare though.
Thermodynamics is pretty definitive, but
in this universe, yes.
In this universe, which is that caveat just helps. But at the same time, you go on Facebook, I don't know, let's just click over on it, maybe I'll pull something up, and you see someone posts a news article, and the news article says, so and so said this, and you're taking their
You really don't have to look up an example. We all know how stupid these news articles are.
So if you look it up and you can't disagree with it, and you see no one's disagreeing with it, and the comments that are negative are hidden, so all the comments period are hidden, unless everyone's just being like, yes, that's so wonderful, preach. It's like, I hate it when people just said preach in university. It was just like, this is not a place for preaching. The theological department is over there, and they won't put up with it either.
No, they don't. And
so you see this, and it says so and so says such and such, and you're like, my gosh, and you're gonna instantly make a judgment on that, and the judgment's going to be good or bad, or he's finally going to do this, or he's finally going to do that, or he's finally going to some policy or whatever, and then someone else, but then you don't look it up. You don't look at stuff like this. Essentially, you haven't made up your own decision. You've been doing what you've got, the reaction that was put forth towards you, and you had the legitimate reaction. But then sorry, I'm stuttering here. I think what I'm getting to is that there's an element of self-awareness that you need in order to actually be skeptical, and that comes to that shows up in a way, or manifests in, why did I do that? Why did I act like that? Why do I hate this guy? Like, so media says, hate Trump, hate Trump, hate Trump, hate Trump. And you just get a good hate on it. It feels so good. And everyone else is hating Trump with you. And you're like, yeah.
I think that's a bit of a different case, though.
It's not.
Trump is exceptionally bad.
Yes, but you can be skeptical of everything. Let's just go to the end of this. Don't worry. I'm not saying, actually, you should love Trump. And it's like,
no, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not making a value judgment on Trump. I'm making value judgments on individuals, and not even with regard to. Well, you'll see. Don't be skeptical. Let me do what I'm going to do. Although skepticism and timeliness we should do next, because there is an element to that. So you're told hate Trump, hate Trump, hate Trump, and you're part of the group, you're hating Trump, everyone's hating Trump with you, because you've met a guy that really likes Trump, and he seemed like a guy that you would expect to like Trump. So it's everything's done this. But then if you're asking, but then the self-awareness can come in at any time. Do I actually hate Trump? Or is he just some thing that I don't like? Or why do I feel like this? Why am I actually having this reaction? Is it because he's actually reprehensible and I don't like what he stands for? And this is where you need to start examining, not Trump. Well, yes, but it goes for any topic. Is you need to examine why you're having your reactions to this. And that self-awareness allows you to be skeptical on any topic. So if you question yourself, you can start questioning the stuff that you are encountering. How do I put
Yeah, I might suggest that the only reason why I would object to that as an example, though, is like if we told kids over and over again, the earth is round, the earth is round, the earth is round, there's nothing wrong with them being skeptical.
Right.
Right? Like, I agree with you there. But where I disagree, though, is the fact that we shouldn't, that the groupthink itself is wrong, because in politics that is the whole focus of it. Is a popularity contest, like, by nature. That is the point of politics. You need crowds to rally against people.
Instagram is making this so useful.
It's different in the sense that with politics, your only power and control as an individual is with a group. That's sort of where I get my objection for. Fundamentally, I agree with you in principle on the self-awareness being the key factor. It's just the example itself sort of portends towards being no usefulness to the group think. And
overly complicated example then.
It was just convoluted, not convoluted, complex, I guess.
I'm trying to be topical here. So I think where self-awareness does come in is that you can test your reactions and find your biases and then become skeptical. And then once you realize what reaction you're having, it's like, oh, I hate this. But then you can start engaging stuff on a more neutral footing. You can be like, oh, I don't like this, but I'm going to read it anyway fairly. And from that perspective, you can realize your, from that place, you can realize your reactions. Like, I know I don't like this body, or brain, but we have to go through it and we have to suffer through it. And we have to look at more than one thing and get an actual proper thing. And you'll find that you might not be on the same, you might find yourself changing opinions on stuff, but you also might find yourself changing opinions multiple times, going back and forth. It's like,
or reinforcing the ones you already had, like having a more intelligent opinion after having questioned it, I think is super valuable.
Even a opinion that turns out being right isn't as useful as an opinion that turns out being right and then you finding out why it's right, or why
it's knowably right,
it's more moral or ethical or whatever. So that is the start of it. But the I guess one thing is that skepticism is definitely this route is definitely one of a bit more effort. It takes a bit more work than...
It's actually really hard to read something you disagree with.
Oh, like, it is.
I try to read, like, Niall Ferguson, for example. He's like a British economist.
That's his book.
It's so frustrating to listen to him, because he's just flat out knowably wrong, and he promotes an idea by cherry picking the things that he just wants to believe without proof, and then shows proof for the things that he has proof for. You know what I mean?
I do, and I actually have a weird spot in my intellectual heart for him, because he's one of those guys who...
He's thoughtful.
He will swim against the grain, and him swimming against the grain in itself does more for history and all the stuff he's talking about than just another book with the same opinion and the same topic.
Exactly.
And whenever he does something new, I almost go after it like candy, because it's like, here's a weird opinion, let's dive in.
But it's so hard to listen to. Like, it's so hard to sit and just be patient and follow him through flawed logic. But he's presenting the best case for a bad argument.
Yes. His one on the British Empire was net benefit for humanity. That was that was some brave stuff.
Oh, dead aid. Africa's for humanitarian aid. It shouldn't be given to African people because they'll just waste it or steal it. Like
I
just
think
flat out wrong.
I think
economics.
that argument is. I think his argument there is, why are we giving man a fish when we could teach them how to fish?
No, he's saying we shouldn't give them any aid. He said, look at what aid has done to them.
Yeah, I've seen that. And
that's
I
the problem with his argument, is that he takes it so far beyond like what the actual extrapolated data would suggest.
But I can't consider him malevolent though, because he
doesn't mean any
like
harm or whatever. I don't know, but he makes people think. That's the important thing.
I don't know if anyone's gonna get this reference, but he's like, there's a gun company called Keltec, and they make the weirdest new designs, and they'll just put them out, be like, here's a weird caliber and it's got a strange mechanism, and here, buy it. And they're not great, but they're all weird, and they do something different every time, and that I can respect. And trying something new, going down that same path is that's stagnation. How do I do this different? And that's I guess we have the freedom in our society to try something new, and which is why I do like living here.
No, I hate to self-promote, but like that's what we're doing with the channel too. Like, how many talking head videos do you see on YouTube? Like I watch tons of them because I'm stuck at home, but most of them are all scripted. Like they're there specifically to push an agenda, whatever they started with, whether it's educational or not. It's just they're very and the ones that aren't are just banter. Like it's just BS. Oh, I fragged you, and playing games.
Oh, like let's plays.
Like, there's no balance where let's just have a discussion where we might have a flawed opinion on politics or on theism or on activism or extremism or whatever we talk about.
Yeah.
It's stuff that people should be talking about but are too scared to be on camera doing.
Yeah, when I upload a video, I always see the because we don't have any subscriptions on our Frivolous Gravitas channel, and I see like the unfiltered, it doesn't know what we want to watch feed, and it's just like, and you see like millions, 18 million views on like, wow, look at this thing, and it's just, this is depressing. Like, I don't want to watch these. I don't want to click on it. Like, I can feel my body being like, hey, yeah, check that out. Look, it's a female body. You should click on it. It's like, no, these are all traps.
It's just trash.
It's just trash. And it's just pages and pages and pages of trash. And that's what people will go on YouTube to watch. And I'm not saying, well, they should be going on YouTube to, watch us. It's like, well, this is an hour and a half long thing. Like, go outside, go for a walk. Like,
mow the
maintain
lawn.
Social distance if you need to. Like, do something productive. I spent a lot of yesterday trying not to be productive because I needed a day off, but I still ended up doing like laundry and dishes and all that stuff. And I'm like, no. But because I've got all these things I want to do, but this is one of those things. And this is for you guys, our audience, because we want to give you something that'll, food for thought or something, and show you our thought process, and also say hi, because there's a lot of that.
Because it's COVID. Hi.
We should do another meta episode. That might be fun. But anyway, this is also us. We have stuff to say, so we're just actually going to put some effort into it. We're going to be productive, rather than let other people say our stuff for us. Even if on the small corner of the internet, this is the voice that we have. And if we don't say anything, then we might not have said anything. And it doesn't matter. So even if it's small, no one's listening to you. So this is what we are. We're putting it out there. And if people get angry, good. If people like it, good. But that's adding to the.
So we're like the Niall Ferguson of YouTube.
We could be. I could definitely get into Niall Ferguson territory. I have some theses in my head that are
stinky. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Theses. Yeah. Don't leave your theses in the open.
They might get read.
So one of the things we've been doing a lot of banter, but I think I've been doing a lot of arm days, so I'm a bit fried, but that's okay because we also want to be personable. I don't want to be a drone on here.
No, but I think really what we're getting at though is the purpose of what we're showing is by example. It's not a thing to say do it like us or be like us or think like us or talk like us or nothing like that. The thing is, you live in a country where you're free to speak, exercise that right to have open discussions and be diplomatic with people. Like,
right.
Just because I disagree with you with something, the fact that you're telling me you believe I'm wrong that's more than enough reason for me to stop and say, okay, I need to think about what I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I respect you as an intelligent individual and lifelong friend and blah, blah, blah. But like the point is, I would otherwise never have been skeptical about the things that you point out without you pointing them out.
Yeah.
Because in my own head, it's just an echo.
Yeah. And this stuff, we've talked on that before. And the other thing is that we try to show our work on here as much as we can. Like the process of coming to our conclusions is part of the content. So that, you can be like, well, how do you say that? Well, we laid it out. Watch the whole thing.
Yeah. Don't just watch the clips. That's the gravitas part of the frivolous.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I want to move to is that I'll just move the discussion forward.
Yeah, give her. Yeah.
Skepticism can be kind of a blunt instrument sometimes, and it can be a bit annoying when used as such, because the hold on one second. You can often just use it to be very contrarian. Lost my train of thought there. Sorry. And a lot of times, if you can use skepticism, like I said, as a hammer. Someone purports something. No, I don't believe that. That's wrong. And you're just skeptical and then drop it. Or, and that's one thing I learned too, is that you can't just, you have to be mature about it in a way, because it's easy for a person to just say, oh no, I'm skeptical on your topic, so I need to tell you why I'm skeptical on the topics. Just like, hear me out, which is kind of why I was like, oh, we need to talk about that before, because we are all guilty of this. I'm guilty of this. I was very guilty of this before I got good at debate. I remember in class just being like, in some of my earlier classes, just being like, no, it's blah, 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 and I just go off talking. And because I honestly kind of enjoyed the exploration, but I was being overly skeptical because it was fun.
It's like an addiction to the novelty. You're looking for a new perspective constantly. Even if you don't want to, you just have to chase it.
Right. And yeah, in retrospect, it was a lot of like, how do I put together an argument? How do I put together a new thought?
Or let's make this conversation more interesting.
Yeah, there was a bit of that. I
remember just challenge people to, for the sake of having a better conversation.
Or, yeah, and it doesn't, well, sometimes I'd be angry in class because everyone was being, what would I call it?
Sheepish?
Yeah, a bit sheepish. Yeah, kind of like 4 legs good, 2 legs better kind of stuff. But I just taught a Orwell class. And I would just throw stuff out there to be a poop disturber and just throw skepticism in there. And the thing was, it didn't actually help the conversation. But I'd given up on the conversation a lot of times when I was doing that. So, but
you're talking about the mature approach though, right?
Right. So the mature approach is to wait for the other person to stop talking before you begin your skeptical counter or begin your skeptical analysis, because you see this a lot especially online, I think is one of the better ones, is you see someone like Jordan B. Peterson, who, if you watch all of his stuff, he's quite an insightful fellow, but you see a lot of people being skeptical, and I was hungry for real skepticism of him, because it's just everything this guy says seems very good. And I agree with him, but I agree with him too much, which was always a red flag for me.
It's his approach that I like, though. I really like that he offered perspective of how he arrived at his conclusions,
Right.
or that he was still struggling with it. And he was like, this is what I think, but I don't know it yet.
Yeah.
Like I haven't, he'll actually articulate his what do you call that? Not incompetence, but ignorance.
Yeah.
He'll articulate his own ignorance, which I think is phenomenal. We should all do that more.
Yeah. And I think how he goes, he's absolutely admirable how he goes about his work. And I was very, very hungry very quickly for skepticism on him. And I found a few really good counters, not counters like, oh, look, it proves him wrong, but criticisms. And there's a difference between a criticism, which is constructive, and a counter, which is a zero-sum concept. Yeah, you're destroying their argument. I proved him to be wrong, therefore he is not an authority on anything. And this is a immature way of going about it. Now, it's a skepticism for the sake of destruction. I'm going to destroy you. I'm skeptical of you, so I will I'll, instead of taking what's good about your arguments, I'll just throw you off the board. And I found a few good ones. There was a book on conspiracies and how they psychologically work, which actually looked at Jordan B. Peterson's work, and he's like, okay, I didn't like his notion of truth, because he was like this, and he gave a honest representation of Peterson's notion of truth, and then and then another thing, and compared and contrasted them and said, I don't really agree with this because he says this, and he made an actual legitimate skeptical argument against one of Peterson's ideas. And I was like, why did it take years for me to find something like this?
Yeah. Sapolsky, I think, had a good argument with him too.
Yeah.
But I mean, this goes back to like Newton and Leibniz. Like they had the same types of arguments over calculus and motion. But it was respectful. You know what I mean? It was like Oppenheimer and Einstein or whatever. Like,
and
or Niels Bohr, and what was his teacher? I can't remember his. Anyway,
I don't remember. Megan would know. But this is
trying to be a history teacher too.
This is the healthy aspect of it. You are skeptical, but respectfully, and
usefully. Like it's thoughtful, and it's not personal, and it's not attacking, and it's not
right. And so if you even like, you can do this with any you can do this with anybody, but when both sides play nice, it works better. So you get a concept, say the earth is flat. Well, it's easily disproved, but you can still hear them out and be like, I've been skeptical this whole time, and I'm very skeptical, and I'm still skeptical after your proof. But you don't need to destroy the messenger. You can realize that maybe they're coming from a place of not ignorance, this can be still a bit harsh, but psychological dysfunction, where or maybe they're just that anti a bit like a psychological rebel, where they can't see the truth, and this truth is a mechanism of rebellion for them, in which case that's their life. Like it doesn't serve anything by you like enforcing skepticism upon them. And that's why I find the whole like flat earth thing, and everyone's just sitting there like like with their like highbrow, like, hold on.
No, I always go out of my way to show them exactly all the different ways that you can figure out that the earth is not flat. You can go to the top of the Burj Khalifa and measure the sunrise and sunset. You can check the stars over the seasons. You can check the arc of a shadow over a sundial. There are so many ways to check that the earth is not flat. You just have to show them. You don't need to attack the person to prove them wrong. You don't need to destroy a person's dignity to have a useful discussion. You could have somebody who's wrong and show them that they're wrong. The way we teach kids, we don't say, you're stupid little kid for not knowing how to do math.
Right.
You teach them math.
That's doesn't how you serve anything. And that's how we teach a lot of students too is, well,
that's what I mean by kids, students.
Yeah, kids, students. I
was ageism. That was a little my prejudice coming out.
But you're right. You actually hit on something really interesting there, was because I remember in school they would teach us in steps, and they would teach us the way humanity found out about this stuff. You know, in physics, they teach you this is what we believe first, and then we did this, and then we learned this, and then we did this, and then we learned this, and you all of a sudden you get this very complex and nuanced version based on how we as a society came to learn it, because all the people that made incremental advancements in something like molecular theory had to learn everything before as if it was the truth, and they applied scientific method to it, or just skepticism before it was codified, and they added that to what was before. So
they're building on smaller pieces, and that sort of gets back to our abstractions episode, where you're taking small fundamental blocks that are knowably useful, and then you make something more complex out of them.
Right. And I think telling when a kid figures out Bohr's atomic theory, which actually I don't think it lasted very long in the as a model, like not long at all. And the kid figures it out. Oh, an atom's like this. You don't like slap and be like, oh, you're so stupid for knowing that and for thinking that, blah, blah, blah. And the same thing is if I go and learn like something I don't know, like mathematics. If I decide when I'm 50 to say, you know what, I never properly learned mathematics, I'm going to go take a night course. And if I get if I figure something out and go, is it like this? And they'll be like, no, you're stupid for finding it out. I'm going to be less likely to go forward and learn anything new. I'm going to be less likely to try anything. And I'm just going to be bitter about the rebuke. And so when we encounter a skepticism to something that's so accepted and so easily provable, we tend to just be jerks about it, which is kind of a normal human reaction. But at the same time, we should be mature about this. And this is part of letting everyone speak, or at least letting them finish speak before you drop the hammer of math upon their heads. Or, skepticism. I don't know about that. Why? Because you didn't cite any sources. I'll let you go back. Find sources. And like you get this in history. It's like, oh, I think this happened and this happened and this happened. It's like, well, where did you get these concepts? Like, I don't think you're completely wrong, but you didn't cite any sources.
They do that a lot in history, actually, where they paint context out of their idea of how things were, having never been there, though. So, like, depending on what you study as far as history, like, if all you study is historical wars, you're going to think that people just did nothing but fight back then. But there were love and marriages, and tribes did have treaties, and people did get together and organize themselves productively.
That's a very
context changes based on what you study.
Yeah, it's a very good criticism of a lot of the historical work, because you get a military historian looking at military history, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, you're only looking at the military." But then
an economist looks at it very differently, though. Like as a historical economist, I see things very differently from war.
But at the same time, there's a lot of good historians out there. Like let's see here. Richard J. Evans, I just about a year ago, I read his Third Reich trilogy, and he goes through the culture, he goes through the military history, he goes through the economy, he goes through art, he goes through every aspect of
Lex Friedman actually just mentioned that too the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was such a good trilogy. I went out and bought another one of his books because I loved that trilogy so much. And he
had a journalist on there who'd interviewed Trump, and that guy couldn't speak highly enough of that series.
Oh,
But for, like you said, for the picture it painted, it was so broad and so excruciatingly detailed.
And but he had good sources. A lot of them were just boring, banal archival sources of, like, you know, troop movements. A lot of them were archival footage and archival documents, but he also had interviews from people that were actually there. He used like William Shire's work and a lot of just everything he could get his hands on. He put it together in a picture. But when somebody doesn't do that, you can be skeptical. Now, if they don't do that and still paint an interesting picture, then you could say, could you go back, polish that up? Because the lack of sources is triggering my skepticism. Oh, I don't like that word. I
think that might be a little bit lazy, though. Be like the person who brought forth all the ideas in the picture and say, like, I think you need to do it for me. I think you need to check all the, like, it should be just as easy for us to go verify what somebody else says. So even if
at the same time, we could, like, sometimes it's easier to ask, what are your sources for this? And they go, what do you mean? It's
yeah, you could definitely ask.
And they'll be like,
I wouldn't expect the other person to do it, though.
Oh man, I totally forgot the bibliography. Which happens. Or
there's
they'll
nothing
be
wrong
like,
with asking. I'm just like,
or they'll say something like,
notice that when I make an argument to them and they'll say, where's your sources? And I'll be like, well, it's kind of known that there was a financial crisis in 2008. I don't need one source to say that it started in 2007 because Lehman Brothers fell. Well, how do you know that? Well, was it the New York Times, Financial Times, Washington? Everybody said it.
Well, that's that burden of proof, which often is, it's so annoying sometimes because it's like, the other side will make a claim and you'll say, and you'll make a claim and they'll be like, well, you know, you're just saying that because this, and you'll be like, or where's your proof that that's actually a thing? It's like, wait, what do you mean? You didn't provide any proof for your side either. It's like and we're talking at a bus stop. So,
and it's one thing if you can't find the evidence, like if you looked because you heard them say it and you can't find any source of it anywhere, then obviously, hey, dude, nobody in the world said there was a financial crisis in 2007. So can you tell me how you came to that conclusion? Like, that's perfectly legitimate.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people that are just legitimately lazy about their own education, where they will wait for other people to present them with everything that they need for their own judgment, when they should be pursuing it actively as a daily endeavor.
Right. And I think that part of it is time and place. It's propriety, which I might have brought up before. But a lot of it's like if you're talking at a bus stop, skepticism might not be the best rhetorical tool because that leans more towards casual discussion than scholarly debate. And
like, still be skeptical, obviously, but it doesn't mean, you know, you end the conversation because of your skepticism, though, because that's just lazy. It's fruitless.
And then I think that makes it is that skepticism isn't something you should be using as a instrument for every little thing in your life. Yes, you should apply skepticism to your own meta life. Like, what am I doing? Apply skepticism onto yourself to master yourself.
The self-awareness aspect.
But at the same time, it's only necessary really when you are doing that, or when you are in need of a decision, or in need of, you have some sort of problem, you have some sort of question. And oftentimes you don't need that. It's like, should I get that bread or should I get that bread? I'll read the bread bags and see which one I get. I like rye bread.
See what's on the ingredients.
Yeah, like
one of them's got polysorbic acetylsalicylic acid or something in it, and the other one's just grain. You know, that might help you make a decision.
Yeah, but at the same time, if it says, you know, gibbity globbity gloop acid, and you're just like, and the other one just says grain, I'm like, I am very suspicious of the one that says grain.
That can't just be grain.
Ingredients: soup. So
it's like when you buy fish or crab meat that has no fish or crab in it, you're like, huh?
Yeah, and that I think is what that's an everyday skepticism. That's
Mhm.
and definitely
That's the maturity thing you were talking about.
Yeah, and so if you read a label and something doesn't seem right, be skeptical and apply that to it. Okay, I have a question. What the heck is grain? Okay, hypothesis. It's grain. Test. I can't test it. I have to open the bag and buy it. And I'm not willing to buy the bread, go and test it in my super secret lab in my basement. It's like,
but then you remember you have the internet. You can just look it up.
Yeah. Okay. So
let's see where this factory is. Let's see who their suppliers are. Let's see what their annual revenues are. Let's see where they bag things. Let's see how many employees they have. Like, there's so many ways to check on things.
This bread company is owned by Russia. Nope, not buying that bread.
or like food from the dollar store from China.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have safety checks there, and they only check 1% of the food that comes abroad. So don't buy your food in a dollar store. Just saying.
Well, and the China is an interesting thing to mention here, because skepticism is, if you've seen their media, it's actively not encouraged there.
Oh, you know what? Sorry to interrupt. Maybe we should get into political skepticism and religious skepticism after a quick break.
Okay.
Because that'll probably be the remaining chunk of our time, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Let's do that. So we'll see you guys in part 2